For thousands of years, ancient Egypt stood as the world's greatest civilization. But there was a day when its final chapter was written. In the vast expanse of history, empires rise and fall like the sun and moon. Their stories are etched into stone and whispered on the wind. But few empires commanded the world's stage with such majesty, such endurance as ancient Egypt. From the fertile banks of the Nile, a civilization was born that would define power, faith, and eternity itself. This is the story of how that eternal empire came to an end. For over 3,000 years, Egypt was the land of gods, kings, and monumental wonders. Its story was written in stone, with the Great Pyramids of Giza reaching for the heavens, a testament to a people who believed they could conquer death. The Nile River, a ribbon of life cutting through the desert, was the civilization's heart, its predictable floods nourishing the land and its people. From Luxor to Karnak, colossal temples stood as gateways between the mortal world and the divine, where priests conducted sacred ceremonies to honor a pantheon of powerful gods. In magnificent tombs hidden deep within the earth, golden masks and priceless treasures were laid to rest with pharaohs, ensuring their journey into the afterlife. They were not just rulers, they were considered living gods, intermediaries between humanity and the cosmos. The Egyptians were masters of their world. They charted the stars with incredible precision, creating a calendar so accurate it formed the basis of our own. Their knowledge of medicine, engineering, and administration was unparalleled. They built an empire on a foundation of faith, architecture, and divine kingship, believing their legacy was as permanent as the stars above. For millennia, it seemed nothing could shake the foundations of this mighty kingdom. But even a civilization built stone by stone cannot escape the relentless march of time. The eternal empire was about to face its twilight. By the end of the illustrious New Kingdom, a period that saw pharaohs like Ramesses the Great expand Egypt's influence to its zenith, the first cracks began to appear in the kingdom's mighty facade. The foundations, once thought unbreakable, started to tremble. The immense wealth that had financed grand temples and lavish tombs began to dwindle. A series of weak and short-lived pharaohs ascended to the throne, their authority a mere shadow of their powerful predecessors. As the central power of the pharaoh faded, a power vacuum emerged, and it was quickly filled. The priesthood, particularly the priests of Amunera at Thebes, accumulated vast wealth and political influence, often rivaling and even surpassing that of the king himself. The spiritual heart of the nation began to beat to its own drum, dividing loyalties and resources. Beyond the borders, the world was changing. In the west, Libyan tribes grew bold, launching raids and eventually establishing their own dynasty on Egyptian soil. To the south, the Nubian kings of Kush, once subjects of Egypt, rose to become its conquerors, ruling as the 25th dynasty. Internally, the empire was plagued by corruption, social unrest, and economic hardship. Granaries that once overflowed stood empty, a symbol of a failing administration. The unity that had been Egypt's greatest strength for centuries shattered. The kingdom splintered into competing factions, with local rulers vying for control. Egypt, the once mighty and indivisible land of the Pharaohs, had entered a prolonged and painful age of division. The Golden Age was over. As Egypt struggled with internal strife, the world outside its borders was being reshaped by the rise of new, formidable empires. These were nations forged in iron and fueled by ambition, and their gaze soon fell upon the fractured and wealthy land of the Nile. Egypt's weakness was an invitation. The first wave of conquerors came from Mesopotamia, the ruthless Assyrian army known for its brutal efficiency and iron weaponry. Swept across the Near East, they invaded Egypt, sacking cities and imposing their rule. Though their control was brief, the invasion was a devastating psychological blow. The invincible land of the Pharaohs had been humbled. After the Assyrian Empire crumbled, a new power rose to dominate the world. Persia. Under leaders like Cambyses and Darius the Great, the Persian Empire became the largest the world had ever seen. In 525 BC, the Persians conquered Egypt, incorporating the ancient kingdom into their vast domain. For nearly 2 centuries, Egypt was a satrapy, a province of a foreign empire. Egyptian monuments, once symbols of pharaonic power, now stood under the shadow of foreign flags. The sacred traditions were sometimes suppressed, and the wealth of the Nile flowed into Persian treasuries. The great conqueror had become the conquered. The world order had irrevocably shifted. Egypt was no longer the dominant force shaping history. It was now a prize to be won by others, its destiny dictated by distant kings and foreign armies. The age of Egyptian supremacy was definitively over, lost to the iron will of new empires. Then, in the year 332 BC, a new force appeared on the horizon, one that would change the course of history forever. A young Macedonian king, already a legend in his own time, marched his army into Egypt. His name was Alexander the Great. After years of Persian rule, the Egyptians did not see Alexander as another conqueror, but as a liberator. He was welcomed with open arms, not as a destroyer, but as a savior who had freed them from foreign domination. In a brilliant political move, Alexander showed deep respect for Egyptian culture and religion. He journeyed to the Siwa oasis, where the oracle of Ammon proclaimed him the son of the god, a divine confirmation of his right to rule. He was officially crowned pharaoh in Memphis, embracing the ancient traditions of kingship. Alexander didn't just conquer Egypt. He remade it in his own image, blending the vibrant culture of his Greek world with the timeless traditions of the Nile. His grandest vision was the creation of a new capital, a magnificent port city on the Mediterranean coast that would bear his name, Alexandria. This city was designed to be a beacon of knowledge, culture, and commerce, home to the Great Library and the Lighthouse, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Though Alexander's time in Egypt was short, his impact was permanent. His death marked the beginning of a new chapter, the Ptolemaic dynasty. His general Ptolemy took control of Egypt, establishing a Greek-speaking line of pharaohs that would rule for the next 3 centuries. With the legendary Cleopatra as its final queen, the age of Alexander marked the final, decisive fusion of cultures, creating a Hellenistic Egypt that was both new and ancient, a brilliant but final flash of glory before the end. The Ptolemaic dynasty ruled Egypt for 300 years, a period of immense wealth and cultural brilliance centered in the magnificent city of Alexandria. Greek became the language of the court, but the rulers, including the famous Cleopatra, presented themselves as traditional pharaohs to win the loyalty of the Egyptian people. They built temples, honored the old gods, and maintained the ancient rituals. Alexandria became the intellectual capital of the Mediterranean world, its library a repository for all human knowledge. But this dynasty was born from conflict, and it would be consumed by it. The Ptolemies were plagued by vicious family rivalries, with siblings and spouses constantly plotting against one another for the throne. While the court in Alexandria shimmered with Greek culture, the rest of Egypt often simmered with resentment against foreign rule. But the greatest threat came not from within, but from across the sea. A new power was rising in the West, a republic with an insatiable appetite for expansion, Rome. As Rome's influence grew, it began to meddle in Egyptian politics, seeing the wealthy kingdom as a vital source of grain and a strategic asset. The final act of this long drama was played out by Cleopatra VII. A brilliant and ambitious ruler. She tried to save her kingdom by forging alliances with Rome's most powerful men, Julius Caesar and Mark Antony. Her love affair with Mark Antony led to a final, epic confrontation with his rival Octavian. At the naval Battle of Actium in 31 BC, the combined forces of Cleopatra and Antony were decisively defeated. Realizing all was lost, Antony and then Cleopatra took their own lives, choosing death over the humiliation of being paraded through the streets of Rome. In 30 BC, Octavian, soon to be Emperor Augustus, annexed Egypt, turning it into a personal province of the Roman emperor. After more than 3 millennia, the line of the pharaohs was extinguished. The eternal kingdom had finally fallen, its glorious history absorbed into the fabric of a new world empire. The sun had set on ancient Egypt. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this journey into the past, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more stories from history. The last pharaoh of Egypt was not Egyptian by blood, but in her hands she held the final, flickering hope of a dying kingdom. Cleopatra, a descendant of Ptolemy, one of Alexander the Great's generals, ascended to a throne beset by internal strife and the ever-expanding shadow of Rome. She was a brilliant strategist, a cunning diplomat, and a woman who understood that power was a game played on a global stage. To preserve her kingdom, she forged alliances with the most powerful men in the world. First, with Julius Caesar, a partnership of politics and passion that briefly secured Egypt's autonomy. With Caesar's help, she solidified her rule, a queen reigning from the magnificent halls of Alexandria. But his assassination in Rome threw the world into chaos once more. She then turned to Mark Antony, another of Rome's great generals. Their alliance was more than political. It was a legendary romance that bound their fates and the fate of Egypt together. Yet even their combined strength could not halt the relentless march of Roman ambition, personified by Caesar's heir Octavian. The clash was inevitable, a collision of worlds that would decide the future of the Mediterranean. The final confrontation came on the waters of the Ionian Sea in 31 BC. The Battle of Actium was not just a naval engagement, it was the death knell of an era. The combined fleets of Antony and Cleopatra, a spectacular display of Egyptian wealth and military might, were outmaneuvered and decisively crushed by Octavian's navy. The defeat was absolute. Antony and Cleopatra fled back to Alexandria, but their cause was lost. Roman legions, hardened by decades of conquest, soon marched on the city's gates. Alexandria, the jewel of the Hellenistic world, fell. Faced with capture and humiliation, Mark Antony took his own life. Shortly after, in a final, defiant act, Cleopatra followed suit. With her death, the long, illustrious line of pharaohs, stretching back 3,000 years, was broken forever. The Ptolemaic dynasty ended, and Egypt, once the world's most powerful empire, became just another province of Rome. Under Roman rule, the very soul of Egypt began to change. The legions that had conquered the land now garrisoned its cities. Roman banners flew where the standards of the pharaohs once stood. Egypt became the breadbasket of Rome, its vast grain harvests feeding the ever-growing metropolis. But the cultural cost was immense. The ancient temples, once vibrant centers of worship, slowly fell into disrepair or were repurposed for new Roman cults. The gods who had guided Egypt for millennia, Osiris, Isis, were gradually forgotten, their stories fading into myth. Most devastatingly, the sacred language of the pharaohs, the complex system of hieroglyphs that recorded their history and beliefs, fell out of use. For nearly 2,000 years, the ability to read these ancient texts was lost. A civilization that had pioneered so much of human knowledge, that had shaped the world in its image, became a silent memory, its grand story locked away in stone. But a legacy as powerful as Egypt's could never truly vanish. Though the empire fell and its gods were silenced, its influence echoed through the ages. The architectural marvels of the pyramids and temples inspired awe and imitation in every civilization that followed. Greek and Roman builders learned from Egyptian masters the principles of mathematics and geometry, developed to build these colossal monuments and manage the Nile's floods, laid the groundwork for future scientific discovery. Egyptian medicine, with its surprisingly advanced knowledge of anatomy and surgery, was studied and passed down through generations of healers. The art, the philosophy, the very concept of divine kingship, all of it, became woven into the fabric of Western civilization. The empire was gone, but its spirit was immortal. Today, millions of visitors flock to gaze upon the pyramids, to stand in the shadow of giants, and to marvel at the treasures housed in museums around the globe. The Rosetta Stone, the key that unlocked the lost language, stands as a testament to this enduring fascination. The empire ended, but its legacy lives on, a timeless gift to humanity. Thank you for joining us on this cinematic journey through the rise and fall of one of history's greatest civilizations. If you want to explore more stories of ancient empires, legendary rulers, and the lost worlds of the past, be sure to subscribe to our channel. We have many more tales to tell. We'll see you next time.